wealthy people that you know today were doing the things that I try to get people to understand that is fundamentally necessary for them to do at a very early age.
Welcome to the 7 Eagle Group podcast, your home for inspiring stories, valuable tips, and great advice from hard-charging veterans so you can lead a more rewarding and lucrative post-military career.
All right. Hey, guys, it is Jordy from 7 Eagle Group here along with Charlie Fitzgerald, a U.S. Air Force veteran. We are launching a new series called Your Money Matters. And this is some incredible information to help our transitioning service members and our veterans just make better financial decisions. And Charlie is as expert as they come in these fields. He's been a business professional for the last 30 years, working in finance and mortgages, a lot of different things. He's run businesses himself. In the last 15 years, Charlie has been a financial service professional. And just so grateful to have you on with us, Charlie, and sharing some of your advice, your wisdom, your suggestions for this incredible community. So let's start at the beginning. When you were serving and getting ready to leave and transition into civilian world, you know, where was your head at? How prepared were you for all these big life-changing decisions that were coming your way?
You know, it was, and thank you for having me, and I'm really happy to be here. It's funny because, you know, I didn't have as much financial acumen coming out as I thought I did going in. You know what I mean? I was an 18-year-old kid, and I was ready to go, and you know, I'm a product of the 70s, let's say. I was born in the 60s, went to high school in the 70s, went in the service in the late 70s. And most of us back then, anything we knew about finances, we didn't get it from school. You still don't. We got it from our parents or our grandparents, you know, and so I knew what a checkbook was. I had one of those, you know, but that was about it. And then you get in the service, you know, and you're like, oh, you know, you're going to grow up, you're going to become a man. And I don't know about that, but you know, all I knew is I opened a bank account at the Federal Credit Union so I could get my paycheck, and that was about it. Yeah. And then when you out process, they're like, here you go, see ya. And you're like, okay, now what? You know, literally none, to be honest. Yeah. I don't think then, I know then, and I still don't think now, it's just not a big thing. You know, my son-in-law just retired after 28 years in the Air Force, you know, and he was like, Dad, they didn't tell me anything, you know. You just out process, you know, and so
pat on the back, go get them.
Yeah, woefully inadequate, I would say, you know.
Yeah. So what, you know, in general, what do you feel that most veterans, most active duty service members, you know, are they well informed when it comes to their financial future? Like, what are some of the things they need to keep front of mind here?
I no disrespect to any of us active duty and or veterans, I don't think so. Again, woefully so. And the education or the you know, the information that they do have, they either got from their parents or their grandparents or a friend, or maybe they were really looking into it, or they heard one of the financial gurus on the radio, which, you know, that's a whole nother story. You know, and they've managed to have a career, short, long, or otherwise, and maybe they've got a family, and maybe they got some kids, and they're coming out, you know, and then they get inundated. You know, there's lots of people that, you know, that go after them, and they're gonna take care of them, and sadly, like any industry, sometimes after they go through that, depending on who they go through it with, they're worse off than they were before.
Yeah, because, like you said, people take advantage of them. They figure, hey, Absolutely. I got a fish on the line here who's doesn't know what to do. I'm gonna guide him instead of. Yeah. What are these veterans and service members like? How are they making these financial decisions? Like, they just must be completely in the dark. Are they just at the whim of these folks who are reaching out?
A lot of times, yes. You know, they sit in front of somebody that's got a really nice office and a big calculator and a name badge, you know, and they say, oh, trust me, you know, I'm going to take care of you. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of industry professionals that do and will and do a great job for them. But there's a lot that don't know much more than they do. What they know is what their sales manager that day told them was the hot product of the week that was going to pay the most commission, and we want to push and get as many people into this as we can. So again, they rely on their parents or their grandparents. I mean, my male role model was my grandfather. Not a bad role model. He was a retired naval commander and a doctor,
Yeah.
But his financial brain was born out of living through the Great Depression,
Right.
And so what he thought was great money management, which was for him and his wife and kids, my mother being one of them, doesn't necessarily translate to me in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and 2000s. I mean, the first thing that generation was told is never have any debt, pay your house off as fast as you can, because until you got your deed and your paid off statement, you don't own it. I completely disagree with that for a whole host of reasons, which we can get into down the road. But so again, family, friends, maybe they got a brother-in-law that's a banker, maybe they go somewhere, or they get hooked into these hey, veteran seminar, we're going to take care of your stuff. And
it's hard. What are some of the things you mentioned? Insurance. What are some of the main categories that our veterans and service members have to think about financially when they're leaving? What are those? One is insurance.
So I mean, for me personally, I think this is applicable to everybody, whether they're service members or not, active or veterans. I mean, just people in general. And my approach has always been, protecting what matters most. So the first thing I do is I sit down and I get to know them really well, whether it's a single guy or single gal or a couple or whatever. And I want to make sure that things like life insurance, which I have clients now, Jordy, that are in their 60s and they've never heard of. I mean, they've heard of it, but they've never taken the time to look at it. I'm like, whoa, I wish I would have got you, 25 years, 30 years, 40 years ago, when it was a lot cheaper. And underneath all of that, my first thing that I always tell everybody to look at is their estate planning. Do they have a will? Do they have a trust? Do they have all that stuff set up? God forbid something happens to mom and dad at the same time while the kids are at the babysitters. Do they have plan and play? Those fundamental things that are really uncomfortable. Nobody wants to think of that kind of stuff. But me, I'm a big gun nut. And I tell people, some of this stuff is like, you want it in place, hope you never need it. But in case you do, you have it. I feel the same way about the Second Amendment. You know what I mean? And so estate planning in terms of, for most people, and that's, we'll do a whole another one on that, living trust, and making sure that now that you're out of the service, you've got life insurance. And a lot of people forget this. Whether it's mom that's the breadwinner and dad staying home with the kids because he just spent 24 years in the military and he just wants to decompress for a while and fish and, great. But if you have a stay-at-home parent and something happens to that stay-at-home parent, your budget as the surviving parent is going to double or triple right away. People don't come wash dishes, clean house, go grocery shopping, clean house, all that stuff. When back in the day, people would make a joke, say, oh, they call these women, housewives, the CEO. They're the CEO of everything, And so a lot of times people forget that, I want to make sure my husband's okay and we're okay if something happens to him, or my wife's okay if something happens. You got to make sure everybody's okay, So we look at that a lot. Debt. I mean, everybody has debt, and no offense, Dave Ramsey, debt is a good thing if it's smart debt. We could talk about that, But knowing what your debt site picture is, knowing what your plan is, knowing whether it's smart debt or debt you need to get rid of right away, or maybe you just have too much of it. Even too much smart debt is not a good thing. And what is you just got out of the military, even if you retired after 20, 30 years, and you're only 50, 55 years old because you went in when you were a kid, you're retired from one thing, but you're not ready to sit on the rocking chair at home for the rest of your life. Right. So let's take a look, and I have my clients tell me, what is your perfect picture of your, I say, if I hand you a magic wand and you are hanging it up, paint me the picture. Show me where you are, what you have, what you don't have, what you want, what you don't want. And then let's look at your asset.
You can work backwards. Right.
Exactly. Let's look at your asset bucket today, and I'll tell you what we need to do today so that picture is not just a head picture. It's a reality picture. It's a goal. It's something, and I don't care how big the goal is. BHAGs, I call them, big, hairy, audacious goals. If you tell me you want to have a house in every country in the world, then fine, figure out how to do it, right? So, those kind of things that you need to sit with somebody that one has the life experience and the knowledge of how you can get there, and most importantly, sit with somebody that will tell you lovingly and with care that we're not going to get there, so let's shave off some of this. Let's look at because it isn't, other than the Powerball lottery, which I don't play, you know what I mean? But there are things that a lot of people aren't doing today in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s for that matter, that because they just think it's too late and I can't, it isn't. It isn't, or I don't have the money. My parents always said you don't invest anything unless it's discretionary. Well, discretionary just means you stop doing one thing to do another. But it's absolutely achievable.
Well, I love, I'll tell you what I love so much about you is when we first met, you like, I just want to help my military brothers and sisters because people are going down these wrong paths, and a lot of these are easy fixes, and you're somebody who has, like you said, these life experiences, these business experiences where you've seen so much in your career, and it's so overwhelming. You're talking about credit cards and bank accounts and insurance policies and wills and estates. That is a lot. We don't get this education growing up, and I know you're not getting it in the military. I didn't either, but
yeah, you don't. And sadly, you get it at times when, I think I was 19. My grandpa said, "Hey, you've been in the service for a year. You get a will done yet?" And I'm like, "Dad, Grandpa, I don't own anything." He said, "Doesn't matter. Do something." And again, it's like a lot of these things people just figure that's for when I'm like ready to say, okay, I'm ready. No, it isn't. Right. It's it just depends on your circumstances. Yeah, I'm passionate about it for a number of reasons. One, I've just always been that way. I was the kid in school that didn't just watch the bully get bullied, the kids get bullied by the bully. I was the bully stopper, I just have always been I guess a product kid in my mind. I fight for the underdog. But more importantly, in all the businesses that I've been involved with, whether I was an employee for somebody or I owned them myself, they were in industries that I believe there was number one, I had a skill set and a passion for it. Right. And it was purpose driven. I can tell you horror stories about, the late 90s and up to 2008 in the mortgage industry, for instance, where people were literally just getting led to slaughter. Sure, they got this big old loan and they got this big old house and they put absolutely nothing down, and 24 months later they were homeless. And so a lot of why I am as passionate about what I do as I am is because I know that there are, and again, sadly, a lot of people in this industry that don't give a whip about the client. Right. They really don't. They don't care. They're very good at putting on the I care face, but at the end of the day, they really just care about their paycheck. And the good thing is those people are usually one or two paychecks away from bankruptcy, because that's not a sustainable thing. You can't get in front of people and say, I really, really care, and don't, and expect that in my world, God's going to let that happen for a long time, so they flush out. But from the estate planning side, in terms of, living trusts and stuff like that, I'm extremely passionate about that, because my own mom didn't have a will. She died way early at 69 years of age. Yeah. Our family attorney that I've known since I was probably 5 years old, I was 40 years old. I just turned 40. When I got a call from my mother's housekeeper, I don't know how to tell you this, but your mom passed away. I'm like, what? I called Toshi Yamamoto, little Chinese lawyer in San Francisco. Was my grandparents' attorney, was my mom's attorney. My mom said, if anything ever happens to me, call Tosh. He's got everything. I called Tosh. I said, hey, Tosh, it's Charlie Fitzgerald. My mom passed away. And he's like, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I said, she said you had all of her estate planning stuff. He said, Charlie, I've been talking to her for 30 years. Wow. My mom did not have an enormous estate. Okay. She had some rental properties that she had inherited from her parents that her and my aunt shared. And she was a retired civil service worker in the state of California. She had a really nice house. Long story short, when you die without a will in any state in the United States, the state, they assign immediately is probated. Your entire estate is probated. They appoint a probate administrator. In my case, I was lucky, and a probate attorney. In my case, I petitioned the court in California to at least allow the family attorney to be the attorney.
Yeah.
But then they just picked the next guy on the probate administrator list, and they settle the estate. So everything in her house, including a 1986 Thunderbird that I had bought her 4 years before, everything in that house sold for under $6,400, not each, in total.
Total. Oh my God.
They have these estate auctions, right? And people show up. And for me, sadly, I had two siblings that I hadn't seen in decades that didn't care about anything, just wanted money.
Yeah.
So it was 2-to-1. I'd say, let's keep all this stuff. Let's give it to our grandkids. I'll set up generation skipping trees. Keep these new. So I watched, my mother's entire life go down the tubes, relatively quickly. The state attorney gets 30%, the probate administrator gets 30%, and the surviving heirs split the remaining 30% after all expenses, right? So am I passionate about telling people, I don't care if you think you don't have a window or a pot to piss in, we're going to have a will or a trust or something in place? Absolutely. Because it's just necessary.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to go long on that, but that's
it. No, it's horrible. And if you can help prevent that for other people, because I would imagine a lot of people come out of the service, right, and they haven't saved a lot of money yet. They feel maybe they're just starting this sort of second half, and they don't have a lot. And like, that's for the wealthy people. I don't need a will. I don't need a 401k, any of this stuff. But why is that such a mistake?
Well, one, because it's just diametrically opposed to the reality of the thing, right? Wealthy people that today were doing the things that I try to get people to understand that is fundamentally necessary for them to do at a very early age. Warren Buffett didn't wake up at 77 and say, I'm going to have 3,000 streams of income. I better get a will. He probably had one when he was 14 because he was already a millionaire, But beyond that, I think people think, well, I'm never gonna, why bother, right? Because in their mind, they can never see themselves, because they've never had it, or nobody in their family has had it, have a comfortable life, retirement with a nice nest egg and everything they need, or they think it just costs so much, or they get hooked into another strategy by talking to somebody else that's just product sales driven. They earn them a commission, and they think they're going to be okay. 401ks, for instance, we could do a whole other thing on that. But here's the reality. I mean, I had a meeting yesterday with a gal and her husband. He's 31, she's 29. They have 2 kids. They're in pretty good shape, but they both said, we really would like to get some money working for us, because that's what I tell everybody. Every penny I get, I put 1/10 of it in my pocket before anybody gets any of it, right? If I get $1, 10 cents is going into something for me. Then I'll start paying other people. And I raise my own kids that way. And I told this couple, I said, I don't want to get personal or anything. I said, but do you happen to have your most current bank statement? They said, yeah, here you go. And I'm looking at it, and I start circling all the ATM withdrawals just for 1 month, right? $380 in $20, right? 20, 19 times. I'm like, okay, where did this money go? Well, I don't know. Maybe I went and got something to eat, or went to Starbucks, or what. I said, okay, well, let's figure that out. Because if you don't know where it went, that $380, or even half of it, I'm a nice guy, 190 of it could have went into something that at your age, with compounded interest for 50 years, is going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's just pointing those kind of things out and helping people realize that everybody has discretionary income. What they also have is discretionary choice making. Right. And so they decide, right, with their discretion, what they're going to do with the money that they have. Listen, I'm not a big Starbucks fan. I got a really cool Keurig. I'd rather pay 32 cents for the cup of coffee than $7, right? But if you are a Starbucks fan and you have to have it, great. Just only have it every other day. Yeah. And give me the $7 a day, right, that you don't have it. And I'll put that, let's say $84 into something today that will be worth thousands and thousands down the road.
I love it. No, I love it. What's so awesome about this, Charlie, is I'm sure, like any of us, have made mistakes in your career, and now we can look back,
Yeah,
56, we look back, we're like,
yeah,
"Oh, wish somebody told me this when I was 25, 35,
absolutely.
45." And that's what I love about what we're trying to do here. We're going to
Yeah,
have a variety of different topics for you. Charlie's going to give us talks on credit cards, on 401ks, on estate planning, on insurance policies, everything financial, everything that nobody taught us growing up.
right.
We're going to try to steer people in the right direction, give them some really useful tips, some education. Anybody who wants to have a one-on-one with Charlie and talk to him, I know you would be more than willing to do that with
Absolutely.
anyone who puts their hand up for you. So
Absolutely.
we'll have his contact info at the end of this, and give you an option to do that.
The other thing too,
Anything else you want to add?
I just want to add this in. There are a lot of financial planners and financial service people that position themselves in front of great products, and they know a little bit about a couple of them. The beauty of, and why I mean, believe me, I could work anywhere I wanted with anybody I wanted to. The reason I work with World Financial Group is because in my personal opinion, after doing this for going on 40 years, we have access to the fundamentally best products in all spaces, financial services wise. The second reason is I'll spend as much time as I need to with somebody and talk to them for as long as I need to get them to I don't want to turn them into a financial services professional. I want to give them enough information so that they can come to their conclusion that what I'm going to help them do is going to be more benefit than if they do 1, nothing, 2, something with somebody else. And all of that costs them nothing.
Zero.
World Financial, we are not fee-based. I don't charge. I've had people offer to pay me money. No. And at the end of the day, if we decide, and I have with many clients, decided that where they are and how they got there, I don't know, but they're okay. And there's no products that I need to, or programs I need. Fine. We'll have a good time. So,
hey, well, I'm right when we hang up this call, you're going to help me with my 83-year-old mom.
Absolutely.
Me and my siblings are throwing our hands up in the air. We don't know what to do with and making sense of any of this stuff. Because similar to like what you said with your mom, I'm sure when we start peeling back the onion, we're going to find out like what a friggin' mess all this financial stuff is in her life. And if we can help get that in order now, and
it's important topics. And when I am really impressed upon a lot of my clients that have children, I say, listen, they're 3, 5, and 8 now. I'm not talking about now, but I'm talking about as soon as, high school. Sit down with them and show them what you have done already, and start getting them experience to do that for them and themselves and their families someday. But more importantly, make sure they understand, God forbid, if something happens to mommy and daddy, here's our folder. We keep it here. Here's Charlie's card. Here's the lawyer's card. Get in it and make phone calls, because we've got it all taken care of. Most people, 40 years ago, it was even worse. Nobody knew anything about what my grandparents had or didn't have. They didn't. They don't talk about that stuff. They'll talk about it with somebody that charges them money to listen. But they won't talk about it with their family and or their friends, right? So it's one of those things you just kind of get through. But happy to help look at your mom's stuff.
Well, Charlie, you are an inspiring guy. I am so grateful that
Thank you.
And I am so grateful that we're going to have a chance to spread this advice, this wisdom with hopefully a lot of people in the military community, so we can get them on the right path financially. So thank you for
I couldn't be more blessed to have an opportunity to do that.
Terrific. Thank you, buddy. Take care.
My pleasure.